guys, welcome back to my channel for another video. Today I'm excited to share a flip through and review of The Mystery of History Volume 2. If you caught my video on Volume 1, you know that we made the switch to this history curriculum partway through the homeschool year last year, and it has been such a great fit for our family. So I will start by sharing a little bit about the Mystery of History, and then I'll walk you through the materials I purchased for Volume 2, which will hopefully help you decide what you might need to buy. And finally, I'll give you an inside look at the curriculum and show you how we're using it in our homeschool. If you're new here, my name is Sarah. I am a former teacher and now a homeschooling mom to 4 kids, ages 14, 12, and almost 7. I love talking about homeschool curriculum here on YouTube and on my blog, blessedhomeschool.com. We've tried a lot of different programs over the years, and one of my favorite things is being able to share what's been working for us so you can get a feel for whether it might work for your family too. Now, just a quick overview in case you're not familiar. The Mystery of History is an award-winning chronological world history curriculum written by Linda LaCour Hobar. It's unique because it teaches history from a biblical worldview and weaves together both sacred and secular events on one timeline. There are 4 volumes that cover world history from creation all the way to modern times. We used Volume 1, which is creation through the resurrection. We used that this past year, and we all loved it. Volume 2 picks up right where Volume 1 left off, starting with Jesus' ascension and continuing through the Middle Ages up to the early 15th century. So in this volume, students get to learn about church history alongside events like the rise and fall of nations, kings and queens, and other major cultural shifts. Okay, let's dive in. First, I will show you the materials that I picked up for Volume 2 and talk a little bit about how we're using them. I wanted to show you this on the website first because last year when I was starting the curriculum, I was a little overwhelmed with what exactly I should buy and what I needed, because there is a lot available that can really help you enrich your history lessons, but a lot of it is optional. So your options, first, you're gonna need a book. If you wanna go ahead and purchase the 4-volume set, you can do that. Otherwise, you're gonna be looking at one of these 2 options, either this Volume 2 bundle, where it comes with a couple of atlases and the timeline figures, or just the book by itself. So you're gonna want the book because that has the code in it, the unique code, so that you can download the companion guide. So this is just gonna depend if you need these 2 atlases and you want those timeline figures and you think that that is a good deal, then you can go with that. If you already have those things and just want the book, then you're gonna want to go with this option. Now, if you do have the book already, let's say you bought it used and you need a code so that you can download the companion guide, that's what this is going to be right here. So you can just purchase the companion guide if you need to. And then they also sell these atlases. I would definitely recommend having them on hand because there is some mapping work that these will come in handy for. So these are good resources to have, or something similar in your homeschool. These right here are planning pages. These are optional, so you have to decide if the $7 is worth it for you, but I really love mine. I love having something where I can check all of the boxes and I have something that I can plan out my lessons on. So I'll show you these in just a little bit, but those are the planning pages. They help you kind of lay out the different lessons and what you're going to be doing, all the different activities for each lesson. So they're very handy spot to write notes in. There's the audiobook here in case you like audiobook options. So the entire Volume 2 is on audiobook and you can purchase it with music or without music, or maybe it comes with both and then you just have to decide. But there is an audiobook for this. These right here are going to be your resources for the timeline. So if you want to put together a timeline with this curriculum, that's what these are going to be. Now, if you plan on doing this all 4 volumes, this right here is going to give you like a master collection of all of the different timeline figures. If you just want the ones that are going to kind of go along with this volume, you're going to choose these timeline figures here. This is your timeline notebook. So again, I'll show you our timeline books in just a little bit, but these are going to be the pages where you actually have the timeline to put the figures on. So if you're planning on maybe doing this in a binder or something like what we are doing, this would be really handy to have. I know some people like to make the timeline on their wall, or you do something really different with it, but these are going to be for if you want to make your timeline and keep it in a binder. This one is a suggested placement guide. Again, this is optional. It is handy because you end up having a lot of timeline pieces, and this kind of tells you where you should place them on your timeline so that if you're using this right here, everything will fit okay when you put it on there. So it basically tells you where all the pieces should go. Definitely optional. In the companion guide, whenever you do the timeline, it will tell you, and I'll show you this in a minute as well, it will tell you kind of what you should do for each timeline figure. So you don't need this. It's just an option if you want something already pre-made to help you put your timeline together. All right, these right here are challenge cards. Again, these are optional, but I would get them. I think they're great for a review. There are about 3 to 5 cards per lesson where they just have a question on the front and the answer on the back, and they're great to just, like I said, go through and review with your kids and keep some of the concepts and the key people, important times right at the front of your mind. So I recommend getting the challenge cards. Coloring pages, if you have younger kids that like to color and will be kind of listening in on the lessons with you, these could be nice to have. I think I have the coloring pages, but we don't use them. These notebooking pages, this is another thing that I definitely recommend getting if you like to notebook, or if you really like to have worksheets or things that your kids can kind of fill in after a lesson. And then we have the folder books. So these are all of the different pieces that you would cut out to put in your folder book. And I will show you ours in just a little bit. Again, another optional purchase. If you purchase it one time, you can print it out for all of your kids if you want to, but you have to decide if it's something that you're going to do in your homeschool, if you have time for it, and if your kids like to do this type of thing. This right here, this is what I think I did last year. This ended up being the best deal at the time. This is just a combo pack. So you get the folder books, you get the student notebook, the challenge cards, and then it does come with the coloring pages as well. So that is an option where you can buy that as a bundle. And then you have quite a few additional resources. You have a Go Fish game, a memory game for medieval history, a cookbook, a King Arthur book, an audio book. And these are all things, again, that are optional. I don't have any of these, but if you want them to supplement what you're going to be learning this year, then they are available for you. Now, one question I always get is, where should we start with the series? Or I have multiple kids in these grades and I'm not sure where to start, which volume to start with. They do have a scope and sequence on the website. It's a little tricky to find, but it's really helpful if you're trying to figure out placement. So I definitely start here, and Linda does recommend that if you have multiple kids that are doing history lessons together and want to make things as smooth as possible, as simple as possible, go with the volume that your oldest student would be using, and everyone else will follow along, working at their own level during the different activities. But that's just a suggestion. You may have other things to keep in mind as you choose, but it's a good rule of thumb if you're homeschooling multiple kids and trying to not have a bunch of different history curriculums that you have to teach each day. Teach everyone the same time period, the same lessons, and just modify the curriculum. Okay, so now let me show you the book and some of the materials more in depth. Here is the second edition of The Mystery of History Volume 2, The Early Church and the Middle Ages. If you guys watched my Volume 1 review, you'll know that I showed that I had used an older volume to go along and use along with my kids. So this one is the second edition, and I found this first edition in a used bookstore, and I liked using this in when we did volume 1 because it has all the activities and everything in here, and so I thought that this would be great. But I will say that with volume 1, while the older edition followed along really closely with the newer version, That has not necessarily been the case with this one. This one does not line up quite as well with this book. This one has just been updated quite a bit. So this is an option if you want to save costs, but I definitely recommend the second edition if you can swing it. This is much more detailed. It is, in color, it's hardcover, and just an overall improvement. So I am still using this to try to follow along, but like I said, it doesn't line up as well as it did when I did this with volume 1, and so it can be a little bit hard to follow sometimes. There's just a lot of extra information. So I just wanted to let you guys know, if you were thinking about using an older version, you definitely can still make it work. I just think this is a great upgrade, and if you have kids that are using different versions, if you have 2 kids and one kid's using one and one's using the other, it's not going to match up as well. So just wanted you to be aware of that. Okay, so let me first show you guys the table of contents. So here is the first semester. It's broken down into 4 different quarters. There are 84 lessons split into 28 weeks. So if you follow their plan, you're going to be doing history about 3 to 4 days each week. You typically have 3 days worth of lessons, and then the 4th day is going to be a review day, which I guess could be optional, but I highly recommend it. So that's what we do. We do 3 lessons a week and then a day of review. And then you have one day where maybe you choose not to do any history that day, that 5th day of the week, or you could add in some additional activities to go along with what you're learning if you wanted to. But hopefully you can see from this list of lessons that what this curriculum does really well is blend the timeline of the early church and other events going on around the world during the Middle Ages. We just finished, today we did lesson 19, we just finished Patrick, Missionary to Ireland. So we're almost wrapped up with quarter 1, and there have been some really hard reads so far as we've learned about the early church and the martyrs and things like that. But I think the lessons are so well written and captivating and do a great job of keeping my kids' attentions and presenting the information in a meaningful way. There is a little preface here in case you'd like to pause the video to read this. And I mentioned this in my previous video. I love these letters to students that Linda has at the beginning of her books. There's one to younger students, and then you have middle and older students. She simply shares her heart behind her writing of this curriculum, shares her faith with students, and encourages them right from the start. It's very clear that she has a passion for history and for the Lord, and I thought these were really nice touches to the curriculum. Here's a little section on how to use the curriculum. I'll talk more about this in a few minutes as I show you my planner and what all of this looks like for us. And then right here we have a little introduction to the first quarter. And then we will get into the first lesson. Just like volume 1, this text is written in a very narrative, conversational style. However, you'll notice that the lessons tend to be a little bit longer and written for a slightly higher reading level than volume 1, which is by design. As you go through the Mystery of History books, the different volumes, each volume is going to increase in reading level and overall difficulty of the lessons. They are intended to grow with your students as they progress through the curriculum. This volume in particular is written at about a 5th to 6th grade reading level, and definitely feel free to pause if you want to actually read any of the text and get a better feel for it. Now, on the website, they do state that most kids should be able to grasp the content in the first 3 volumes, maybe with a little bit extra help if they're on the younger side, but that might get trickier as you get to volume 4. So many families choose to save volume 4 for high school and use it as a world history credit. But even then, each volume still has activities for younger, middle, and older students to do, which I'll show you in just a minute where those are. So you can read through this, you can have all of your kids listen in on the lessons and then do their own age appropriate activities. And I love this about this curriculum. Now you might be wondering where all those activities are, because as you see, this book is simply the lessons and the readings. There's no teacher notes or anything distracting like that. All of the activities are going to be found in the companion guide that I mentioned earlier. This is an almost 800-page digital document that you get a code for to download when you purchase one of these student readers. These codes are unique and can only be used once. So unfortunately, if you buy a curriculum used or you buy a book used, you will still need to purchase the companion guide. But let me show you real quick what the companion guide looks like and everything that it includes. Okay, so here is the digital companion guide. I'm just going to give you a quick peek at this. You have kind of like a table of contents over here on the left. This right here, this how to use section, gives you a little bit of a scope and sequence. I like this part here where it talks about using this curriculum if you're teaching a variety of ages. Kind of gives you a little schedule and kind of shows you how to manage it if you've got kids in different ages. You have some different grading tips right here. So if you are having to keep this course for a grade, she kind of walks you through how to do that. And then you get into, you have semester 1 and semester 2, and you get into all of the different lesson resources. So all you need to do to navigate is click over to whatever week you're in and then scroll through, and everything that you'll need for that week is right there. So every week there is an optional pre-test. If you want to give your students a pre-test, that will be available to print out. And then as you go through every lesson, you're going to have some activities. So for the first lesson, they put together a notebook, and it kind of walks you through how to do that. And that's where they're going to be storing all of their papers, things that you print out, and just any loose papers that you have during the course. And let's see. Okay, so after that, every lesson, you're going to have a suggestion for younger students, and you'll have a suggestion for middle students, and then a suggestion for older students. And you'll have that for every lesson. Here's your example for lesson 2. And then lesson 3. So you have 3 lessons each week. And then you get to that 4th day, which is kind of a review. So again, after every week, you're going to have this section that's take another look, and it's going to be a review of those first 3 lessons. So here they talk about making the memory cards, the wall of fame. This is the timeline. And here is where, you know, the kids are going to make their timeline figures or use the timeline figures from the printable pack if you purchased it. Now this is what I meant when I said if you don't buy that, you still have some instruction on what to do. So however you're making your timeline, it'll tell you, you know, on an index card, draw a flame and write the word Pentecost. You can burn it if you want to, kind of a nice little effect. And then it tells you exactly what to write on that card. So for this one, again, you have instructions for each of them. Draw a picture of a ship. In big letters, write Paul's journey. And then, you know, it tells you where to put that on your timeline. So if you don't purchase any additional timeline things, but you want to make a timeline, they've got some really neat ideas here for how you can put that timeline together. And then every week there's going to be some kind of mapping activity and just some different, let's see, this is still the mapping. So they've got, again, younger students, middle students, and older students, different mapping exercises. And they provide all of the maps right here that you would need. So you can print them out right from this companion guide. And then there's either an exercise or a quiz each week. So this week looks like there is an exercise, and they're doing some kind of scripture search for this. Okay, so that's the end of week 1, and then you get into the pre-test for week 2. So that is basically how the companion guide is structured and all of the resources you have for all of the different weeks. There is a test for each semester. So here's a look at that semester 1 test. And then you get into semester 2, okay? The other great thing that you have in this companion guide, so over here in the appendix, you've got a section where you just have the different maps. So if you need to find those for whatever reason, you've got all the maps here. Even though I have found that these are included within the different weeks too. So this is another place that they have this. I get asked a lot if there are supplemental books and different read aloud suggestions. And yes, those are all going to be in here. So they have this broken down by topics. So that's one way. Here are the different topics. So you see they've got an atlas topic and they've got some suggestions here. But then you get into some other different suggestions based on those different topics. And again, it's great because it's sorted by younger, middle, and sometimes older. They've got videos in here and all sorts of things. So in addition to being broken down by topic, they're also broken down by the different lessons. So if you click down here and go into quarter 1, this will tell you for every lesson, it'll have supplemental resources or materials if you want to use them. Now, I think it can be quite a lot if you're adding something in every lesson, but it's worth looking through this and seeing if, you know, something sticks out to you, something that you want to add in to your homeschool for your kids. The first week, we actually started reading this, Twice Read. We're still not done with it, but we're reading a little bit every day, and it really did go along well with what we've been studying, and we really loved it. So once we're done with this one, whatever lesson we're on, we'll probably come back in here and maybe pick out another read aloud, because we do like to have books that we are reading aloud together, either at lunchtime or after dinner time. But you do have a lot of resources listed here if you want extra book and sometimes video suggestions. And so that's basically it for the companion guide. You also have an answer key here for all of your answers for the pre-test and the different activities and exercises if you need them. So this is packed with everything that you're going to need to successfully complete this course. So what we typically do for each lesson is we all sit around the kitchen table together and we'll all take turns reading. My kids will each take a paragraph at a time. They'll read a paragraph at a time, round robin style, for each new lesson. And then after we read, so after we would get through, you know, this entire lesson right here, this is a little bit longer one, we would read through that. And then after we read, they will do the notebooking page in their notebooks. So for this lesson, here's their notebooks, and I would flip to right here. So this is the page for this lesson. This is what they will fill in. Then, you know, some days we'll go over answers for this, and then most days we'll do a piece in our lap book. So right now, this is the lap book that we've been working on for the first quarter. There's actually 4 different lap books that they'll make, and there's one for each quarter. So we're not quite all the way done with this yet, but this is what we've been working on for these first few weeks. I have really liked doing this lap book. We aren't big lap book people, and we actually, believe it or not, have never really made a lap book before doing this. And I just want to give you guys a heads up that when you purchase and print out the lap book components, they do have, so you've got all the different pieces that you're going to glue into your book, but then there are also pieces that have information filled in that my kids have been basically just cutting out and pasting into the different lap book sections. And I didn't look at it closely enough and didn't realize that that was all on there, which is totally fine. But in the instructions, it does tell you what to put in each little part of the lap book. So what I'm planning on doing now that we've gotten a good feel for this for our first quarter, when we get to the second quarter lap books, I'm probably not going to be printing out all of the text, and my kids instead are going to be filling this stuff in on their own to use kind of as a review. So you do have some good options for that. If you just want them to make it and then have all the material there to use as a review, then you can cut it out, use all the pieces, or if you want to make your kids think a little bit more, they can actually write the text and stuff in the little flaps in their lap book. So like I said, it's been good so far. That's how we're going to change it up a little bit for the second quarter. Okay, so those are our lap books. And then finally each day we do a little review of our challenge cards. So I keep those in here. These are the challenge cards. So I purchased them and I had them printed on cardstock. And these are just little question, and then they have the answers on the back. And there are about 3 to 5 cards for each lesson. And they're really great for reviewing. So they go over some of the key pieces of information from each lesson, and I'll just take them out, and sometimes we'll go through all of the questions. Some days I'll just kind of pick and choose what to review, but they're really great for keeping all of the information fresh in my kids' minds. So I just pull out the new ones every time we have a new lesson, keep them in here, and then use those for review. These here are the planning pages that I showed you guys on the website. These are an optional purchase, but I love them because I love checking all of the boxes and having something structured to plan on. So I'll usually have this open next to me and just kind of check things off as we go through the lesson. Many weeks they have some great mapping exercises. So these would be, our 3 days of lessons, and then this is kind of the review day. They have a lot of great mapping exercises in here that you can do. And then about every other week, they kind of alternate between some kind of review worksheet, and then some weeks they have a quiz. And what I like about the quizzes in this curriculum is that they're cumulative. So kids are constantly reviewing all of the material that we have already covered. And those challenge cards are really helpful for reviewing that stuff. I know I personally struggle with remembering historical facts. I really want to be better at it. And these cards that I showed you, these are helping me out a little bit. I was doing pretty good at first, but then when you start adding more names and dates and things like that, it all starts to get confusing for me. But I'm super impressed by how much my kids have been able to remember as we go through these. So I think reviewing every day helps, and that's why in my planner I write down the challenge card and memory card review, and I'll talk about the memory cards in just a minute. But reviewing them every day helps. Also, the fact that the lessons are interesting, that really helps, and it just, really makes the material stick. It's just overall been great. So let's talk about those memory cards. They will make these every week. So what they are, we'll pull ours out. I keep them in that same little card box as the challenge cards, but basically, these are homemade flashcards, and since there are 3 lessons each week, and I've got 3 kids that are doing this, each of my kids picks one of the lessons and makes a card for that lesson. So basically on one side, how we structure these, they write the name of the lesson. On the other side, we write the volume that we're in, the page number. No, that's the lesson number. So what lesson it is, if there's, they all have dates. So the dates that they need to remember, or the dates that this lesson took place, and then they give a little summary of that lesson. So writing down any kind of interesting facts or anything that is important that they want to remember. And the reason my son highlighted this date down here, I think, is because that might be one that they have to memorize. They don't have to memorize a ton of dates, but some of them they are expected to memorize. So these are the memory cards. We'll make these once a week and then just kind of pull them out and use them for review here and there. Again, they're helpful to use before a quiz or things like that. And I'll tell you what I do is I do my planning every Friday. So I kind of will just look at the upcoming week, decide which of the activities that we want to do. So I haven't planned this one out yet, but I'll kind of flip through it and I'll look at the different activities that are listed that week. And if I decide that they're activities that we want to do, I'll look through the PDF companion guide and see which ones look meaningful for my kids. I'll just circle those, and I'll print out any worksheets or maps or quizzes that we're gonna need for the week so it's all ready to go. So when you see these things circled, these are just the things that I picked out that we're doing. And then I have anything printed that I just keep in the front of my binder so it's all here and ready for us. This is an example of the worksheet that they'll be doing. It's kind of a cumulative review that they'll do at the end of this week for all of the lessons that we've done so far. So it talks a little bit about the dates to memorize there. And that's just to look at what this review worksheet will look like. Finally, once a week, we will do our timeline books. This I have in, I think about a 1.5 or 2 inch binder. And I did purchase this from their website because we're going to be using it this year and subsequent years. So basically in this binder, they just have their timeline sheets. So I had this printed on cardstock. It's obviously, most of this is blank right now because we've been working mainly in this early time period. So we do have some of our pieces here. This is my son's binder, and he doesn't always like to color his figures or anything like that. But this came with all of the different figures, and so I printed them out, and then we just cut them out and stick them where they belong on the timeline. So far, it's been going okay. I just have all the extra timeline figures in the front of the binder here. And like I said, we'll do that about once a week. There's usually 2 or 3 other figures that we add to our timeline books. Okay, so that is just a look inside the student reader and some of the materials that we're using alongside of it this year. What I love about this is that it's really adaptable to your needs and what your family likes to do to learn. Last year, we literally just read through volume 1 and we did the notebooking pages, but that was pretty much it. We didn't do any of the folder books or timeline figures or memory cards or anything like that. Now, we were on a faster schedule last year, and would those things have enriched our learning? Absolutely, but I don't think it hindered us to not do them, and it didn't take away, from anything that we learned by leaving them out. So just keep that in mind. The text is so rich, the lessons are great, and yes, if you can add in any of those little extras, you can do that, but they are optional, and you can get so much out of this curriculum either way. I really hope you've enjoyed this look at the Mystery of History Volume 2 and the materials we're using in our homeschool this year. I hope this video gave you a clearer idea of what's included, what you might need, and how this curriculum might work for your family. If it did, please hit that thumbs up button to let me know. We're really enjoying learning history this way. Honestly, it's become one of my favorite subjects, and I think my kids would say the same. I've found it to be thorough and engaging, and it pulls together so many parts of history that I never really connected before. I think every Christian should learn history this way, weaving biblical history with world events. It makes things so much more meaningful and shows us just how God has worked through time. Overall, the Mystery of History has been such a solid choice for us, and I'm excited to keep going with it. If you've been wondering whether it's the right fit, I definitely recommend giving it a try. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions at all. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.